Academy IAS, a one stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. This is Shyam Kaggod here, taking up the Hindu news analysis for 22nd November 2025. Before I start the discussion, please do let me know that I'm audible and visible for all of you. Please give me the confirmation. Thanks a lot. Let's start the discussion. So, first and foremost, let's have a look at the list of the articles that I'm going to cover. I've taken 11 articles from the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper from the subject of economics, polity, international relations, ecology and environment, etc. The discussion will cover the aspects for the prelims as well as the mains examination. This has been taken into consideration so that you will be able to answer good number of questions and score very high number of marks. If you're liking this initiative, do hit the like button. If you're yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Now, before I start, tomorrow, November 23rd, the Unacademy is conducting Mega UCSC 2025. Those who are appearing for the Prelims 2026, you must take this particular test in order to evaluate yourself before you appear for the UPSC 2026. This will help you evaluate your strategy, evaluate the status of your preparation, and do a course correction that is required. Two slots are there, 11 a.m. or 5 p.m. Whichever suits you, take up that particular slot, attempt the test. And if you score very good number of marks, you will also get a chance to win multiple rewards. Second very important point before I start the discussion. Today evening, Mukesh sir is taking up the monthly current affairs session live starting from 7 p.m. He'll be covering the important current affairs topics for October and November for the subject environment and ecology. Do not miss out this particular session. Let's start. The first very important article from the editorial page, environmental responsibility. Now, what are the important points? Let's understand. Point number one, the government of India, just like many other governments around the world, have been implementing multiple reforms to promote ease of doing business. Now, one such reform that is basically implemented by the government very recently to promote the ease of doing business is make changes to the green belt norms. I'm using the term green belt. It is also referred to as a green cover. In the month of October, the government of India, and when I say government of India, specifically here, the Ministry of Ecology, Forest and Environment. So, this particular ministry made certain changes to the norms applicable for green belt or green cover, covering many industrial, right, let's say areas. Now, what was the important change that was announced by the government? Unlike earlier, where you develop an industrial estate, what is an industrial estate? Industrial estate simply refers to a region which is notified, which is identified, and in this particular region, industries are promoted. The companies are supposed to be set up in this region, and the production is supposed to be done in this region. So, the industrial estate, until very recently, that is till the end of October 2025, they were supposed to have green cover or green belt of 33% of the land. In simple terms, if there is an industry which is set up, 30% of the land in this particular region has to have green cover. That is, plantation has to be done. Now, please understand, this particular number was reduced by the government in the month of October from 33% to 10%. It was reduced by the government from 33% to 10%. What was the logic of the government? The government basically said, with the reduction of these kind of norms, that is, a reduction in the green belt or green cover requirement, it is going to promote ease of doing business. The companies will not have to adhere to these kind of compliance requirements. The burden on the companies will go down and it will promote industrialization in the economy or in these particular regions. The writer, Mr. P. Raghavan, has certain criticism against this kind of a policy. What is a criticism? Listen to the argument very carefully. It's not just Indian government, but multiple governments across the world who have implemented these kind of regulations in order to promote industrialization. But when the governments reduce these kind of green cover norms and basically say this has been done by other countries, hence we are also going to implement these kind of norms, the argument of the writer is this should not be the norm. If something is being done by other countries, you just don't have to blindly take up this particular norm and adopt it in India. Reason being, the country in which the green cover norms have been reduced, the green requirements have been reduced, the population of that particular country could be different. The forest area or the forest coverage in that country could be different. The requirement of industrialization in that country could be different. So, when so many differences will exist between India and the other country, how can the government simply replicate the same norm which is being implemented in another country and quote it as an example? The writer simply says it is like recommending the same diet for everybody, from adult to youngsters to the children, or let's say to the pensioners. You do not have to recommend the same diet. The diet requirements will change. And in the same way, requirements from one country to another country will change. You cannot simply argue that the other country has implemented, hence I'm implementing. And moreover, the second very important argument that has been put forward by the writer is that when the countries will reduce these kind of norms, that is green cover norm. For example, I said in India, the Ministry of Environment and Ecology has reduced the green cover requirements from 33% to 10%. Again, what is the meaning of it? I'm repeating this. It simply means when an industrial estate is developed, rather than having 33% of the land with plantation, now the industrial estate has to have just 10% of the land under plantation coverage, other green coverage. So when you reduce this, this will have an impact on ecology and environment. Of course, yes, it will have an impact on ecology and environment. And this is not the first time that this particular debate is actually taking place. Historically, there is always a conflict here. There is always a dilemma. What's a dilemma? You want to promote industrialization. And when you want to promote industrialization, you will require land. And when you require land, a lot of this particular land which could be used, right, or which has a plantation coverage, tree coverage, or forest area, etc., a lot of times this coverage of plantation would be cut down, or the plants would be cut down, and industries would be developed. This, no doubt, that is the promotion of industrialization will contribute to employment. Yes, will contribute to production of goods and services, will contribute to GDP growth. But at the same point of time, when you keep on converting this particular land which has a plantation coverage or the plant coverage into the industrial area, you will be basically removing certain, let's say the certain forest area. You will be destroying the forest area, and this will basically lead to lot of issues and contributing to the climate change. It will contribute to climate change. So everybody is able to understand the argument here. This is nothing new. Historically, this argument has been existing. Same argument has been put forward by the writer. In addition to this, the writer simply says, if you want to promote industrialization at the same point of time, let's say, ensure that environmental degradation will not happen, why not adopt a new model? Nature based system, NBS. Why not adopt a new model? What is the new model? Let's say on one side, you will allow the companies, you will provide relaxation to the industries to reduce the tree cover in the region where the industries are set up. Okay, you will allow the relaxation, you will reduce the limit, the amount of land that could be used or that must be used for covering the trees, covering with the trees. But at the same point of time, now the industries must be imposed with one more regulation. What is the other regulation? Why not impose a regulation in such a way that in other regions, that is outside the industrial clusters, now these industries will have to contribute to, let's say, greening of the area. What do you mean by greening of the area? Let's assume certain area, right? There is a lot of erosion that is taking place there. Lot of plants have been lost in that particular region. The right, let's say deforestation has been conducted in that particular region. Why not impose this kind of a restriction wherein when you reduce or provide relaxation on one side, will mandate that the companies must develop, will have to invest money, will have to spend money to develop the green cover in other regions, that is, let's say certain forest areas. And the reason this recommendation has been provided is very simple. No doubt, the plants which are, right, let's say planted, or the plantation that is done within the industrial estate, no doubt, these are required. But when you compare the green cover within the industrial region with the forest region, the forest will always provide better ecological services. Remember this particular point. The forest will provide better ecological services. What do you mean by better ecological services? The forest will absorb the emissions much better. The forest plants will have lot of variety. They are much better developed compared to the plantation that is done within the industrial estate. The variety of the plants which are present in the forest is much better. Higher variation is present in the forest region. So that is a precise reason. Within the industrial estate, is there a requirement of a plant cover or the green cover? Yes, that is required. But that is not going to provide the ecological services which are provided by the forest region. Hence, the writer recommends that the government of India must adopt a new strategy wherein, with relaxation being provided in terms of reducing the tree coverage within the industrial estates, now we must impose certain regulations on the mandates on the companies to develop or basically provide for green coverage outside the industrial estate, for example, in the clusters, in the forest region, etc. So these are certain important points discussed in the article. Is everybody okay with the discussion? Please do let me know. Is everybody okay with the discussion provided here? Can I move on to the next article? Great. Now, based on the discussion, please take up the assignment. Descriptive question, a 10 marker question for 150 words. Promotion of ease of doing business should not be done at the cost of ecological safeguards. Elaborate the statement. Right? Elaborate the statement. You can start with an introduction, and this is for 150 words. Start with an introduction. Introduction such as the recent announcement in the change of the rules are done by the Ministry of Ecology and Environment. Mention that October guideline which has been issued, where the tree coverage or the green belt or the green coverage norm has been reduced from 33% to 10%. What is the objective behind it? But at the same point of time, in the main body, you can mention what are the concerns associated with this. And finally, in the way forward, you can recommend this kind of a, right, let's say policy change which should be adopted by the government, which is required, mind you, which is required to ensure there is sustainable development, there is sustainable growth, there is inclusive growth. Because I hope you understand, a lot of you will not be able to connect the idea of a inclusive growth with the article here. But please understand, whenever there's a change in the climate change will have an impact on, let's say, for example, rainfall, and this will have an impact on the production in agriculture, the overall economic activity, etc. And that will have an impact again on inclusive growth. So one of the features associated with the inclusive growth is protection of environment itself. So this is the assignment. Please take up this particular question for practice of descriptive answer writing. Now, second article, the new direction for India should be towards Asia. What should be the new direction? Listen to me very carefully. There are two very important aspects which are being discussed here. On one side, India USA relations are mentioned. I'll discuss in some detail. And on the other side, the trilateral, that is India, Russia, and China. The relations are also discussed. And what are the important points? Let's start. Historically, if you see in the last 2 decades, USA's relations with India have improved a lot. And the objective of USA has been that India will not only be a strategic partner for USA, but at the same point of time will be acting as a counter to China. USA has been promoting the growth, development, has been promoting right better relations with India. Of course, not in the last 6 months, but before that, in the last 2 decades. The idea was that we will basically have very good relations with India so that it will act as a counter, right, for the Chinese ambitions in Asia. But in recent times, there has been soaring of relations between India and USA. And I'm pretty sure none of you are new to this particular discussion. With the new president of USA taking, right, let's say certain measures, for example, imposing 50% tariffs on India, right, imposing certain other trade restrictions associated with India, maneuvering more and more towards, right, let's say Pakistan, having better, right, let's say relations, agreements with the Pakistan government, etc. Right, so the relations between India and USA have not been as high they were or as conducive they were, let's say 6 months ago or before in the last 2 decades. And on the other side, India's Russia's relation, it have boomed over a period of time, especially in terms of defense, and with the G7 group of countries or the Western countries imposing sanctions on Russia, India and Russia relations, especially in terms of trade, have started booming. Although in recent times, the amount of defense equipments that India is importing from Russia, out of the total, again I repeat, out of the total has gone down. There was a point of time when total defense imports that was done by India, out of that, more than 60% of the imports were brought from Russia, were imported from Russia. Today, it is just around 30%. The crude oil, 3 years ago, it ballooned. Now, it has gone down. And the same in the context of India as well as China as well. There is a trade relation that has been existing between India and China. India exports, imports from China. Although we would prefer to have a better trade balance, but nevertheless, the situation right now is that India has relations with China, Russia on one side, and India USA relations are on a colder story, or let's say basically have been affected to a certain extent in recent time. But USA's concern is that India should not be purchasing more and more crude from Russia. India should be a strategic partner of USA. And this was basically put forward by the USA's ambassador, right? Mr. Gore, who has been appointed recently as the USA's ambassador to India. He stated the main priorities for USA. The main priorities for USA right now are one, to ensure to bring India as much as possible closer to USA. Right? Look at this. The two most important priorities for the USA is to bring India as much closer to USA as possible. The first one. And second one, the argument is that India purchases a lot of crude from Russia. Russia uses this money to basically finance its war against Ukraine. So, as much as possible, the crude purchases must be reduced. It must be cut down. Right. So, these are the two very important, right, let's say priorities which have been put forward by the representative of USA, that is the ambassador of USA to India now. The article which has been written by Mr. Mukul Sanwal basically states India has to be very careful looking at all of these particular situations. India has to be very careful. Why? On one side, USA wants India to be its strategic partner. And on the other side, India Russia relations have been historic. India China, right? We depend on a lot of imports from China, and USA doesn't like it. So India has to prioritize, India has to strategize, and its foreign policy will play a very pivotal role in the coming days. So the argument or the recommendations which have been put forward by the writer in this particular case is one, please have a look at these recommendations which have been provided. One, focus on partnerships to protect the interest. India should focus on the partnerships. Yes, India has a relation with European Union. India has a relation with China. Russia as well as USA. So the relationships which are existing, you should protect them. You should promote better relations. But at the same point of time, do not allow other countries' agenda to influence the kind of relationship that you have. What does it actually mean? For example, when Mr. Right, let's say Donald Trump says India has to cut down the oil imports from Russia. It cannot be allowed to import from Russia. The government of India's stance has been very clear regarding this. The government of India repeatedly has stated that we will purchase the crude oil from anybody in the market which is in our interest. What is the interest here? Anybody who will sell the crude oil at the lowest price, we will be open to purchasing crude oil from them. That's it. So you are ensuring that your interest is protected without ensuring or without allowing the other country to dictate your partnership. Same thing in the context of, let's say, the defense imports from Russia. Right. So the first recommendation is this: focus on your partnerships, improve, work on your partnerships, but ensure that your interest is paramount. Your interest is protected. Even in the context of China, yes, we are interested in having better relations with China. We want imports from them. We want to export to them. But at the same point of time, we do not like China supporting Pakistan in various matters. For example, very recently, this news has broken out that during Operation Sindoor, China ran multiple, let's say websites or the handles on Twitter or X where misinformation was spread by China. The amount of investment China has been doing in Pakistan, although it has been pulling back right now, it has basically withdrawn some of its investment. Argument is India should protect its interest, but at the same point of time ensure that other countries' agenda will not drive the partnership that India has with other countries. This is the first very important recommendation. Second very important recommendation: India needs to become self-reliant. Atmanirbhar in your simple statement. India has to become Atmanirbhar. Atmanirbhar where? Atmanirbhar in terms of defense. Atmanirbhar in terms of technological innovation. Atmanirbhar in terms of, let's say, national data, etc. The meaning of this. Whenever you talk about, let's say, access to technology, we are dependent on other countries to give us access to this technology. When you talk about defense, although again I'm saying the situation in India in terms of production in defense is not the same as it was, let's say, 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago. Compared to that particular time period, yes, today we have developed a lot of technology, indigenous development is there. But at the same point of time, even today, we are dependent on lot of these technologies, from Western countries. We are dependent on defense imports, etc. So, government of India should focus on this, promote the development of this. I'll just give you one example. Just one example. The government of India very recently has announced a funding in order to promote research and development in India. This is expected to promote investment from the private sector, and this is expected to reduce the import dependence. Last year, the government of India announced FDI 100%, up to 100% FDI in the space sector. Right, so multiple liberalization reforms have been announced by the government in order to promote investment in Indian market, research and development to be promoted in the Indian market, etc. Sufficient is yet to be done. We need to make India Atmanirbhar or self-reliance. Third one, cyber warfare. In terms of national security, cyber warfare should be the central pillar. Gone are the days, right? The writer simply says, gone are the days when the warfare used to be fought on land. Today, it is fought in extreme cases, even that can happen, but it is mostly in the form of a cyber warfare. Right, so the cyber warfare should be the central pillar, right, in terms of the national security. And not to forget artificial intelligence. The fourth very important area where the government of India should focus: promote investments, invest a lot of money, provide a lot of money for the development of this is artificial intelligence. Believe or not, historically, when you see, artificial intelligence has been concentrated in the Western countries. That is, basically, investment have been done by the private sector companies. The development has been promoted by the American government. For example, earlier administration, when Mr. Joe Biden was the president of USA, they brought in a law, CHIPS Act, basically to promote development or the promote investments in the development of semiconductors. Right, so artificial intelligence is going to be present, is going to revolutionize a lot of things that we are doing currently. But at the same point of time, if we do not work now, if you do not act and invest in the promotion of artificial intelligence models within India, if you be dependent on other countries, etc., then just like many other technologies, over a period of time, we will be dependent on the artificial intelligence. I'll just give you one example. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have heard of this. Airtel provided Perplexity free of cost. Correct? Am I correct? All of you are right. I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of this, and many of you are using it. And now Reliance Jio is basically having a tie-up with the Google and is offering Google Gemini 3 free of cost. They'll say the package is for 18 months. The actual cost will be 36,000 rupees. You will get it free of cost, etc. But please understand, there is also at the same point of time a concern associated with these kind of, let's say, the offers which are being provided by the telecom companies to all of us. The concern is that what if these particular Western countries are using India as a testing ground? Listen to me very carefully. Mr. Amitabh Kant also has raised the same concern. Neo-colonization. He called this as right the era of neo-colonization. That is, the argument is they will give you all of these tools. You will provide all of your information. Now, are they using this particular method to basically test out how efficient is their AI tool? They want to refine their AI tool. And then once the refining is done, once the AI tool is worked out, no glitches, etc., etc., that particular case, now they will offer the same AI tool to you at a premium pricing. Right? They will provide the same tool to you at a premium pricing. And that is the reason there is a need to develop AI languages, invest in AI languages, develop the AI models which are indigenous to India. Right? So, this is one more recommendation that has been provided by the writer here. And the government of India has allocated certain amount of money, just over 10,000 crore rupees, for promotion of AI languages in India or AI mission in India. But the argument is this amount of allocation is not sufficient. This is no way sufficient. Allocation has to be much, much higher. In fact, even if it is increased by 20 times, it will be much, much lower than how much the foreign companies are investing in developing the AI. So these are some of the recommendations that has been provided in this article so that India, which is a very important part of Asia now, reason being, many of the countries until now were only focused on China because China was the major country. In terms of GDP, it was very large. In terms of manufacturing, very big country. But now, along with China, along with the dominance of China, many of the countries have experienced how China operates. Now, along with China, the focus is also on India. India is also a focus now. Many countries are open to having better relations in terms of trade, in terms of defense, etc., with India. And that India needs to look into all of these particular factors and work on these particular measures. So these are the recommendations given in the article here. Can we move on to the next article? Please do let me know. Those who are present, please do let me know. Can we move on to the next article? Okay. Next article, important for your UPSC examination. 4 new labor codes notified. New labor codes have been notified by the union government now. Yesterday, the Prime Minister of India, through the tweet, basically announced right, the notification of 4 new labor codes. What is the discussion here? Listen to me carefully. Whenever you talk about labor laws, one of the reasons why India's industrialization has not worked to that particular extent, why The development of industries in India has suffered over a period of time amongst multiple factors. One of the factor has been the labor laws. One of the factor has been labor laws. Of course, I'm saying not the only factor, multiple factors. Labor laws, multiple labor laws which were applicable until now were formulated just after independence or before independence. Multiple laws. For example, the Factories Act 1948, or for example, the Industrial Disputes Act 1926. So multiple labor laws were formulated in a time period which is not the true representative of what is the time period today. Over a period of time, for example, Government of India has implemented the LPG reforms, liberalization, privatization, and globalization reforms. As a result of which, the composition of Indian economy has changed. How the private sector operates, how much private sector contributes, how much private sector is investing, participation of the foreign companies in India, all the composition has actually changed. But the labor laws have remained archaic. Please remember the term. The labor laws have remained archaic in nature. Archaic in the sense, very old labor laws, right? Out of sync with the current situation, etc. The government of India took 29 labor laws. The government of India took 29 labor laws, consolidated all of these particular labor laws into four labor codes. They've consolidated these particular four labor laws into four labor codes. What are these four labor codes? One is a code on wages. It is there in the PPT. Have a look at this. Second one is a code on industrial relations. Third one is a code on social security. And the fourth one is occupational safety, health, and working conditions code. These are the four codes. Now, the concern has been that the government of India has announced the formulation of the code couple of years ago, 2019 as well as 2020. They were passed. But the government of India was worried that there would be a large scale opposition from different segments, which is present even today, by the way. For example, the trade unions are opposed to the labor codes. They're opposed to the four labor codes. The government of India finally yesterday has announced notification of these four labor codes. It has announced a notification of four labor codes. Now it has to formulate detailed rules and the guidelines for the implementation of the four labor. But with the announcement, what is going to change? What is going to happen? Let's look at certain very important changes. Have a look at this. Until now, the government of India used to notify minimum wages. Now, these particular minimum wages were applicable only on certain scheduled means notified jobs. But now, the minimum wages shall be paid across all the jobs. Right? That is the first one. Second one, now please understand, the wages shall be paid on time. The wage payment has to happen without any delay. On time, it has to be done. Earlier, there was no mandatory requirement of issuing, right, appointment letter. Underline the term mandatory. That is important. Mandatory. That is, if you are hired by a company, should the company or must the company issue an offer letter? There was no mandate on the company. That is important. But now, the government of India simply says, once you are going to hire an employee, mandatory, the offer letter has to be issued. It has to be issued. And what is the importance of that? It will ensure that whatever working conditions or conditions associated with a job, what is your salary, right? What are the benefits you are going to get, etc. All of that will be put in the paper. All of that shall be mentioned in the paper. Okay? Equal opportunities and pay for women as well. There shall not be any kind of a job based discrimination. The women will be allowed to work even in the the late night shifts, etc. Even in the hazardous industries, they'll be allowed to work now. Social security will be provided to more than 40 crore workers. And the gratuity will be provided now. What is the gratuity here in this context? If you are a worker in a company, a full time worker, you are supposed to complete 5 years in order to get gratuity. Now, the government of India simply says if you have completed 1 year, and then you will have to provide gratuity, and this is applicable for fixed term employments. What is the basic idea of a fixed term employment? A company will offer a job to you for a specific time period, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years. These contracts are called as fixed term employments. Right? Apart from this, mandatory annual health checkup for all the workers who are aged above 40 years and 100% health security for workers for working in hazardous sectors. So please have a look at this. These are certain very important changes that are going to take place with the implementation of these particular four labor codes. Right? What is the objective of the government of India? The objective of government of India is, earlier we had too many labor laws in India. For example, these 29 have been formulated into four labor codes. We had too many labor laws. When you have too many labor laws, it becomes very difficult for the company to implement. The compliance burden will increase, and this in many ways can lead to harassment of the employers. Now the government of India simply says, let's not do that. These labor laws were formulated long back, way back, when the situation in the economy was completely different. Let's change the labor laws so that it will promote ease of doing business. Please remember, it will promote ease of doing business. Second, it is going to reduce the compliance burden. This is going to reduce the compliance burden as well. And because the number of labor laws are going to be cut down now, right, lot of changes are going to be implemented. This will reduce a lot of disputes which led to the cases being filed, right, in the courts, etc. Because the right, let's say, clarity has been provided regarding provision. Many of the provisions which are outdated have been withdrawn, have been taken off, right? New definitions have been provided, etc. It will provide clarity, reduce a dispute, reduce the case load as well. And not just this, the government also says, please look at the provisions. Look at the provisions. The provisions will provide benefit to the female workforce. The provision will promote a female labor force participation. Because please remember this, in case of India, when you compare to the global number, female labor force participation rate is very, very less. Very, very less. So one of the outcomes we are expecting from these kind of reforms is that more women will participate in the workforce, and that will increase, right, let's say, women empowerment at the same point. Right? So these are some of the outcomes we are expecting from the four labor codes that have been announced by the union government or notified by the union government now. Before I go forward, please listen to me very carefully. Whenever you talk about the labor and connection to the Constitution of India, labor is mentioned in the concurrent list. Labor, right, as a subject is mentioned in the concurrent list. What is the meaning of it? Under this particular list, whenever a subject is mentioned, the laws can be formulated by the union government as well as the state government. That is basically the idea of a concurrent list. Now, before I go forward, let me ask you one question. How many of you are interested in reading about, let's say, most important provisions of the labor codes? Most important provisions. There should be a discussion which will be 40-45 minutes discussion associated with only labor codes. Do let me know if you're interested in the comment section of the video. I'll provide that video for you. Okay, let's solve an MCQ. Consider the following statements. Labor falls under the central list in the seventh schedule. Right? Labor falls under the central list in the seventh schedule. Seventh schedule is correct, but not the central list. It is concurrent list. Concurrent list. There is no minimum employee requirement to form a trade union. This is incorrect. A lot of you are saying B is correct. No, my dear. Right? There is no minimum employee requirement. No. According to 1926 law, you are supposed to have at least 7 employees. At least 7 employees should be there to form a trade union. And according to the latest 2020 law, there should be, right, 100 employees at least, or 10% of the total number of employees. 100 employees or at least 10% of the total number of employees. So please remember, there is a requirement. There is a threshold requirement. Both the statements are incorrect. Right option for the question will be option D, none of the above. Okay. Now, next article, COP30 draft. COP, Conference of 30 draft text skips mention of fossil fuel use. Now, what is the discussion that is happening? First and foremost, please understand COP30 is being conducted in Brazil. Where in Brazil can be asked in UPSC prelims. It is being conducted at Belém. Point number one. Point number two. In the earlier COPs, for example, COP28, which was conducted in Dubai, there was a mention regarding right the pathway to eliminate, to reduce the dependence and consumption of fossil fuels. There was a path which was recommended, which was accepted in the text of the COP 2018. Sorry, COP 28. But now, according to the text, draft text, what do you mean by draft text here? Simple. Listen to me carefully. Whenever these meetings are conducted, after the deliberations are over, the host country will prepare a text on which all the signatories or all the countries participating will basically put the signature. That is called as a draft text or basically the cover text. Now, the draft which was provided by the host country, that is Brazil here, has omitted any kind of a mention of a pathway to reduce fossil fuels. Simple. I'll repeat the statement. The draft text, which was basically supplied or given by the hosting country, that is Brazil, has skipped any kind of a mention on a pathway to reduce the fossil fuel consumption. And this has actually led to frictions between two groups of countries. And this is important. Reason being, some time ago, please understand, some time ago, there was, right, basically a emission gap report published. How many of you have come across this? Emission Gap Report 2025. The Emission Gap Report, which is published by United Nations Environment Project, UNEP, states that if you go according to what has been happening right now, if you basically meet whatever targets have been provided under the Paris Climate Agreement the Paris Climate Agreement a decade ago, etc., even if you meet these conditions, the path we are following, we will not be able to restrict the increase in the global average temperature to below 1.5 degrees Celsius. We will not be able to restrict the change in the or rise in the global average temperature. Rather, the gap report mentions that maximum, at the best, what we can do is we can restrict the rise in the temperature to pre-industrial level to the extent of 2.3 degrees Celsius to 2.5 degrees Celsius. This is the best we can do. It's not that we will not be able to achieve the target which has been set up in the Paris Climate Agreement. We can achieve that target also. But if you want to achieve that particular target, more ambitious cuts will have to be implemented. With the current pattern, we will not be able to cut. Simple. In the current pattern that we are following, we will not be able to cut and restrict the increase in the average temperature to below 1.5 degrees Celsius. That is what has been provided. A starking, right? Let's say a stark report published now, Emission Gap Report 2020. This has happened on one side. Now, in the COP30, there are two groups of countries. One group of countries, African countries and many other countries, who want the text to mention the pathway to reduce fossil fuels. They want the text to mention that. At the same point of time, there is another group of countries, that is basically the petro countries. The petro countries, that is those particular countries which are known for production and supply of crude oil. Russia, Middle Eastern countries, along with many other consuming countries as well. For example, China, right? And forget about USA, by the way. USA is not even represented, is not even present in the COP30. I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of this. USA is not present in the COP30, no representation. Reason being, the government of USA, Mr. Donald Trump, the president, has announced he is going to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement. And not just this, in the G20 group of countries meeting which is being held in South Africa, USA is not present. In fact, the next presidency is with USA, but there is no representation of USA. The president is not going to the meet, and neither are they sending any kind of a representation. The reason being, couple of months ago, there were right? Certain talks which were held in the Oval Office, that is the President's office in USA, between the President of USA as well as the head of South Africa. There were certain frictions, certain statements were said which was not acceptable to, right, let's say both of the parties, and as a result of that, the President of USA has announced that he will not be going to, right, let's say the G20 group of countries. But anyways, come back to the discussion here. Petro countries, this group of countries is against any kind of a mention of a pathway for the fuel consumption or the fossil fuel reduction in the text. They are against any kind of a mention. So there have been two groups which are formed. The draft text which was issued, that has been rejected by more than 80 countries. Even today, as I speak, the negotiations are happening. In fact, Friday is supposed to be the last day for the COP30, but nothing to be worried about this. Generally, whenever these kind of conferences are conducted, they will go into overtime. They generally go into overtime. Negotiations are being conducted. Let's wait and see what will be the final text that will be published by the hosting country. Okay, now associated with the discussion, right? MCQ here. The emissions gap report is published by, straightforward, nothing difficult in this. It is being published or it is published by UNEP. Option B, right, is the right option. Okay, let's go forward. Next article. Security regulations at seaports. The government of India has announced that CISF, Central Industrial Security Force, I'll write it on this side. CISF, Central Industrial Security Force, CISF, will henceforth be responsible to provide security at seaports. It will be responsible for providing the security at the seaports. Now, what is the reason? What are the important points you need to remember? Listen to me very carefully. Point number one, CISF, right, basically functions under Ministry of Home Affairs. Please remember this. CISF works under Ministry of Home Affairs. Point number one. Point number two, there are multiple ports in India, more than 200 ports. These particular ports are divided into major ports and non-major ports. Non-major ports. I'm writing non-major. In some of the books, they will also write it as minor ports. So more than 200 ports are there. Major ports are 13 in number and remaining are non-major or minor ports. Now regarding the major ports, the security in the major ports is provided by CISF, Central Industrial Security Force. It is providing, right, the security there. Whereas in case of non-major ports, the security right now is being provided either by private security or by police force. Is everybody okay? It is being provided either by private security or by local police force. But there has been a concern. There has been a rising concern. The concern has been that there have been multiple instances in the recent past where certain terrorist activities have been taken place, have taken place. Certain trafficking issues have been brought to light. Multiple cases where drugs have been transported using the seaports. So now the government of India, being worried about all these instances, has announced that going forward, even the seaports, I repeat, going forward, even the seaports will be brought under the security coverage of CISF. In fact, right, understand this, the government of India has announced that CISF will be recognized security organization. Remember this, recognized security organization in the context of providing security to the seaports. For example, already the airports are covered under CISF. Now, right, basically the seaports will also be covered, right, by the CISF. And what is the importance of this? Once it is going to be providing the security in these particular non-major ports, the operations would be divided into two parts. Listen to me carefully. The operations are going to be divided into two parts. Again, I'm talking about non-major ports because major ports already are under the CISF coverage. These will be divided into core operations as well as non-core operations. Core operations and non-core operations. The core operations will come under the coverage of CISF. And what do you mean by core operation? For example, providing security, providing for screening of the products going into the port, going out of the port. Non-core operations, for example, maintaining traffic, right? Maintaining traffic surrounding or in that particular seaport. So the core operations will be brought under CISF and non-core operations will be given to the private security forces or else the local police forces. So this is a very important change that the government of India has announced, and with this, the government of India expects a better security management to be done even at these non-major ports. To begin with, the government says or the CISF says 80 ports, right? Totally 80 ports along with the major ports. Totally 80 seaports will be brought under the coverage of CISF, and later on the coverage would be expanded to the other seaports as well. So these are certain very important points associated with this. And remember one particular point. With the implementation of this, the government of India is also ensuring that it is abiding by, right? Or basically it is an extrapolation of implementation of a law. Please remember the name of the law. International International Ship and Port Facility Security Code. Port Facility Security Code. Remember this particular name can be asked in the UPSC prelims. Right? The government of India, by announcing the expansion of CISF to the seaports is ensuring that it is abiding by the International Ship and Port Facility Security Code. In short, this is called as ISPS. This particular guideline was announced by International Maritime Organization, IMO, and these guidelines basically are part of, right, the SOLAS. 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 What is the SOLAS? SOLAS basically refers to International Convention on Safety of Life at Sea. International Convention on Safety of Life at Sea. SOLAS. SOLAS. Right? Basically, under this particular treaty, SOLAS, under one of the chapter number 11, the ISPS was introduced, has been implemented, it has been designed by IMO. India is basically abiding by these particular guidelines. Done? Okay, so these are certain important points associated with the article. Please have a look at it. Now let's solve a MCQ associated with this. Consider the following statements. CISF functions under the Ministry of Defense? No, it functions under Ministry of Home Affairs. International Ship and Port Facility Security Code ISPS has been developed by IMO, International Maritime Organization. Yes. India has adopted the ISPS code. Yes. Multiple laws have been implemented already by the government to basically show that, right, we have adopted the ISPS. So 2 and 3 are correct. Right option for the question will be option B. Only 2 of the statements are true. Now, let's go forward. Smaller articles. Kerala seeks SIR deferment. That is the special intensive revision. The Election Commission of India has announced SIR in multiple states. And multiple states have already gone to Supreme Court of India and have filed a petition against ECI's SIR. Now, one state which has joined this particular, right, let's say the filing of the petition in the Supreme Court of India against SIR is the state of Kerala. Now, please understand what is the contention. Multiple petitions have been filed. Right? One petition says there has to be deferment. Understand, there has to be a deferment of SIR. And there is one more petition filed by the CPI party which says SIR has to be cancelled in the state of Kerala. Let's not get into the political debate here. What is the reason why Kerala is asking, the state of Kerala is asking for deferment of SIR? The reasons which have been cited are very simple. The state of Kerala says there are local body elections. There are local body elections. In the same time, right, the Election Commission of India has announced the special intensive revision. So SIR is going to be conducted in the state of Kerala, and the state is already gearing up for local body elections. Now, when you have these two, right, let's say activities being conducted like this side by side, there will be a lot of pressure on the resources. What kind of resources? To conduct SIR, you will require people. Simple. You will require people, that is government officials. You will require police security. And for preparing for the local body elections, which are supposed to be held in the second week of the month of December in the state of Kerala, they will require the same. That is, the government workers as well as the police security. So the state of Kerala says it is not possible. It will put undue lot of pressure on the right, let's say resources like this. So for that particular purpose, the state of Kerala has asked the Supreme Court of India to defer the exercise of SIR, the state of Kerala. The Supreme Court has stated that it will take up the petition. It will look into it in the next week. Right. So let's wait and see what will be the order or the judgment issued by the Supreme Court in this particular case. Now next, rupee falls to lifetime low. The Indian rupee against the dollar, right? The Indian rupee against the dollar has fallen to its lifetime low of more than 89 rupees. That is basically the Indian rupee now is equivalent, right? It is equivalent, that is $1 is equivalent to more than 89 rupees. This is for the first time Indian rupee has crossed and has fallen to this particular level against the dollar. And right, what is the argument? Why Indian rupee is losing value? Reasons which have been cited are very simple. The foreign investors are worried. They are simply worried what will be the outcome of India USA trade. The negotiations have been happening for a very long time period now. Some form of agreement could have been announced by now. But because there is so much of uncertainty regarding what is going to be the kind of a shape or form of the trade agreement. Now, lot of the investors are worried, concerned, they are pulling out their investment. That is the first reason. Second very important reason is there is a concern that there might be an AI bubble. There is a concern that there might be an AI bubble, artificial intelligence bubble. And because the AI bubble concerns are there in the USA market, lot of investors have already started pulling their investments. The stock market in USA has already lost more than $1 trillion rupees. I'm sorry, $1 trillion amount of investments in the last couple of days itself. It is reflected in the foreign investments in India as well. Lot of the investors are jittery. They are nervous. They are nervous. What is going to happen? And whenever investors are nervous, it is never good news for the forex market. Everybody wants to move out of the market and enter into a safe haven or a safe investment. And the third reason essentially is stated to be the decline in the cryptocurrency value. The Bitcoin very recently has lost huge amount of value. Bitcoin value has fallen down, crashed very, very recently. So these are the three very important reasons which have been cited why the rupee value is falling down, dollar value is improving or strengthening. Dollar is strengthening, rupee is losing value. Right? So these are the reasons why rupee has lost value, has fallen to all-time low. Next, the government has announced that it will be announcing the guidelines defining what is obscenity. What is the obscenity under the new law or under the information technology guidelines? I'm pretty sure all of you remember the India's got latent row. After that, the Supreme Court of India asked the government of India. After this, right, basically issue was taken up by Supreme Court of India. The government was questioned by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court asked Government of India whether the government is considering to implement any kind of a regulation defining what is obscenity. The concern of the Supreme Court was that a lot of times, right, people take freedom with the freedom of expression, right, because it is provided under the right fundamental rights. A lot of times, something that should not have been put forward in the form of, let's say, right, a video, in the form of, let's say, a statement given. A lot of time, the flexibility is taken, right, basically giving obscene content, right, or let's say the vulgar content online. It is applicable to, right, let's say the OTT platforms. It is applicable to the YouTube, etc. So the Supreme Court of India questioned the government of India whether the government of India is considering defining what is obscene content, which is applicable to all of these, right, let's say service providers right now. So government of India now has given a writing to Supreme Court, has given a submission to the Supreme Court, wherein they're saying they are ready to introduce certain changes to IT rules of 2021. The government of India has announced that they will, or has submitted to the Supreme Court, they will be amending IT rules of 2021. And a huge, right, a definition has been proposed, which might be covering the concerns which has been raised by many experts is that don't worry about the definition. The definition that has been given by the government might be too much open ended. It could cover anything and everything under the sun. The government might label this as obscene content and strike it down. Right? So the government has proposed to make changes to the IT rules 2021. That is essentially the gist of the article provided. Okay. Now, the next article, IAF Tejas. Right? The IAF Tejas crashes at Dubai Air Show. Now, right, please understand what is the importance of this article. IAF Tejas is indigenously developed. The Indian Air Force very recently retired MiG. I'm pretty sure all of you heard of this. Very recently retired the MiG 21 aeroplanes and the fighter planes. In addition to MiG 21, the the IAF has also announced that they will be retiring many other, right, let's say fighter planes. For example, the MiG 29, it will also be retired. The Jaguar planes, the Mirage, etc. All of these particular fighter planes are said to be retired by IAF. For example, by 2035, the IAF says we are going to retire all of these particular planes. Now, in addition to this, IAF has got very high hopes on the Tejas. And that's a precise reason the Indian Air Force has already put an order for 182 Tejas planes. And there is a plan to expand this particular number to more than 300 over a period of time. But at the same point of time, now this kind of an accident, although I'm saying this is the second such accident in 20 plus years of Tejas. 20 plus years. The first flight, please remember all of this, it can be asked in the preliminary examination. The first pilot flight was taken by Tejas back in the year 2001. The name Tejas, the christening of this particular plane was done by Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee. It has been designed by Aeronautical Development Agency, part of Ministry of Defense, and it is manufactured by Hindustan, right, Aeronauticals Limited, HAL. Right, so HAL is manufacturing this, ADA is designing this. So the concern that is basically is that in 2024 there was an accident at the Tejas crashed, and now, right, this particular crash also has raised a certain issue. Right. So in addition to this, there were multiple instances where the orders have been placed for the Tejas planes, and there is a delay in the delivery of the planes. And that is the second very important concern. And the third very important concern, there was a statement given by the IAF chief who stated that the Air Force is not happy with the performance of the Tejas plane. They were not happy with the performance. Although details were not given, they were not happy with the performance of the Tejas plane. So these are certain points that you need to remember. Apart from that, nothing else is required for the UPSC examination here. Now, apart from this, please remember it is the smallest and lightest supersonic fighter of its generation. At this particular point can be asked in the preliminary examination. Now, next article, UK proposes new migration rules. Why is it relevant for Indians? Please understand, Indians form one of the largest migrated population, residing in UK. Now, the UK, right, the government of UK has proposed a new migration law. Right? What is this particular new migration law? If you want to be identified as a resident, if you want to be classified as a resident, they will use a term, please remember, indefinite, indefinite live, indefinite live to remain. Right? Basically, if you want to become a citizen of UK, it is a pathway. Right? Once you migrate there, you'll have to stay for certain time period. Then you will be right identified as an indefinite live to remain, and then you can apply for citizenship. So the ILR, the term is ILR. So ILR, once you want to be identified as a resident, now the new rules have been proposed by the government of UK. These are much more stringent, much more stricter. These particular rules basically provide a faster way to get the residency status if you are more productive, if you are required more in terms of your skill set, if your salaries are higher. And as you keep on going to the bottom of this particular pyramid, right, let's say non-skilled worker, right, migrant workers with, let's say, dependents, etc., you will have to stay there for a very longer duration, much higher duration, to get the ILR status or the residency status there. And after that, you can apply for citizenship. Please have a look at this. For example, if you're a high earner who makes more than 1.25 lakh British pounds, right, then you can apply for, right, the settlement in UK after 3 years. If you are a doctor, right, if you are basically, right, let's say nurses, etc., you can apply for a settlement in UK after 5 years. If you are somebody who is earning more than 50,000 pounds, right, then you will have to apply for settlement after 5 years. If you are unskilled, right, if you are basically a low skilled worker, now you will have to wait for a longer duration, stay in the queue for a longer duration to apply for residency in UK. So this is the new proposal that has been put forward. Please go through the points. It will have an impact, definitely the impact on population which has migrated, including Indians. And the last article, just an update. Ukraine's choice is between losing its dignity or the US. What is the update here? Yesterday, we looked at the 28-point proposal. Of course, not all the 28 points, around 5 to 6 important points we looked at. Now, the government of USA has given a deadline. The president of USA has given a deadline to Ukraine. Ukraine either has to accept this particular deal by 27th, at 27th of November, or else there will be no further assistance of whatsoever given to Ukraine by USA. No intelligence assistance, no cash aid, nothing. All the aid that is being provided by USA to Ukraine would be stopped if Ukraine doesn't agree to this particular deal by 27th. Right, so deadline has been set up now. Let's wait and see what will the, right, let's say the government or the head of the government of Ukraine decide. So this is basically an update associated with what was discussed in the yesterday session. So there you go. These are the 11 articles as well as the concepts, questions, points associated with these 11 articles. If you have liked the discussion, do not forget to hit the like button. If you're yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Before I close the session, anybody has any kind of a question, do let me know. Anybody has any kind of a question associated with whatever we have discussed in this particular session, do let me know. Okay, done then. That's it from my side. Take care. See you tomorrow with another set of articles from tomorrow's edition of Hindu newspaper. Till then, take care.